There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who want a companion that greets them at the door with uncontainable enthusiasm, follows instructions, and makes it abundantly clear that you are the center of their universe. And those who prefer a creature that watches them silently from the top of the refrigerator, unimpressed, observant, and entirely uninterested in your approval. If you are the second type, you already know that the world has never quite known what to do with you. Pop culture turned cat people into a caricature. The eccentric loner, the cold intellectual, the person who simply couldn't connect and settled for cats as a consolation. But those images were never really about cats. They were about discomfort, the cultural discomfort with people who don't perform connection the way society expects them to. Because science tells a very different story. Your preference for cats isn't a quirk or a personality deficit. It is a fingerprint, biological and psychological, that reveals how you process emotion, how your nervous system seeks safety, and how you relate to the kind of intimacy that doesn't demand anything from you in return. The question was never whether you love cats. The question is why. And the answer is more precise than most people expect. Modern culture is built around visibility. Being expressive, energetic, and emotionally legible in every room you enter has quietly become the baseline for being considered socially healthy. Anyone who doesn't match that standard gets labeled quickly, withdrawn, cold, hard to read. Cat people challenge that standard. They don't broadcast their inner world. They don't require constant interaction to feel connected. They don't confuse noise with intimacy. And this makes them easy to misunderstand in a culture that has confused the two for decades. But psychology offers an important correction. The absence of constant expression is not emotional absence. It is regulation. Many cat people are extraordinarily observant, tracking subtle shifts in tone, body language, and atmosphere that louder people miss entirely. They may say less, but they notice more. What looks like detachment from the outside is, more often than not, discernment on the inside. Cat people aren't avoiding connection. They are avoiding unnecessary stimulation. They choose environments that respect their internal rhythm. And when you stop measuring social health by volume, the caricature collapses completely. Psychologists who study personality through the Big Five framework, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism have found consistent patterns in cat people that explain what the stereotypes never could. Cat people tend to score higher in openness to experience. This translates to creativity, intellectual curiosity, and a genuine comfort with complexity and ambiguity. They are drawn to ideas and perspectives that don't fit neatly into conventional frameworks. They are more willing to sit with questions that don't have clean answers. They also tend to score lower in extroversion, which doesn't mean social incompetence, but that energy flows inward before it flows outward. Social interaction costs more. Noise and constant engagement drain rather than energize. This isn't shyness. It's a different architecture for how stimulation is processed. And research shows slightly elevated neuroticism in cat people which, in this context, is better understood as sensitivity. A heightened awareness of internal states, a quicker registration of environmental changes, an earlier detection of stress. It functions less like a flaw and more like an early warning system. The inner life of a cat person is rich and active. It is simply mostly invisible because they rarely announce it. Cats fit this psychology with remarkable precision. A cat doesn't rush toward you to discharge its own energy. It settles into a space and allows you to settle with it. There is no demand to perform, no emotional state to manage, no expectation that you arrive in any particular mood. For someone whose nervous system registers the world at higher resolution than most, for someone who has spent the day self-monitoring and calibrating, that quality of presence is not just pleasant. It is restoration. Calm, for a cat person, is not passivity. It is recovery. If any part of this is landing for you, take a moment to drop a like on the video. It helps more people find conversations like this. And if you're drawn to the deeper psychology of human behavior, consider subscribing. It's the best way to stay connected to this work. There is an evolutionary layer beneath psychology, and it operates long before conscious thought arrives. Researchers call it the baby schema, the hardwired human response to features that signal infancy. Large eyes, rounded heads, small noses. Evolution built this response to protect helpless, young, and domestic cats match the profile with uncanny accuracy. When a cat looks at you, something in the brain registers the infant before it registers predator, triggering an automatic warmth and protectiveness that bypasses rational assessment entirely. For many cat people, this dynamic carries a particular resonance. The care flows in one direction, but it doesn't demand anything emotionally complex in return. The cat doesn't monitor your mood. It doesn't need you to be cheerful, or consistent, or emotionally available in any specific way. For people who grew up learning to regulate their emotions early, or who have spent their adult lives managing the emotional states of others, the experience of offering care without that weight is genuinely unusual. It allows closeness without the vulnerability that usually accompanies it. And then there is the purr. Before emotion has a name, before the mind has processed what it's registering, the cat's purr is already working. It operates at low rhythmic frequencies between 25 and 150 Hz that the human nervous system interprets as a signal of safety. Long before you consciously register comfort, your breathing has already deepened. Stress hormones have already begun to drop. Your body has already been told, this is safe. Psychologists call this co-regulation, the way two nervous systems can influence each other's state. What makes the cat's version unusual is that it requires nothing conversational. There is no emotional labor. There is no performance of connection. The cat sits on your lap without expectation of eye contact, without needing anything named or acknowledged. That mutual respect for the unspoken creates connection, without intrusion, and for people whose relationship with intimacy has been complicated by pressure or expectation, it can feel like the most honest form of closeness they know. This is what attachment science points toward. Cat people don't avoid attachment. They avoid attachment that demands constant proof of itself. A cat's affection is earned gradually, through attunement, through patience, through learning to read subtle signals, through demonstrating that you can be trusted not to impose. When a cat finally chooses you, that choice feels real, precisely because it was never guaranteed. It is voluntary, in a way that many human relationships are not. There is a strange layer still, worth mentioning because science named it directly. Toxoplasma gondii, a microscopic parasite that can only fully reproduce inside a cat. Research suggests it may subtly influence the behavior of infected hosts, potentially softening human aversion to cats, among other effects. The science remains genuinely debated, but the idea itself says something worth sitting with, that our preferences are shaped by forces, both conscious and invisible, and that what we experience as pure feeling may have a biochemistry we haven't fully mapped. It doesn't diminish the connection. It deepens the mystery of it. Finally, there is the cognitive dimension, the one that rarely gets named, but may be the most quietly significant for many cat lovers. Deep thinking requires long stretches of uninterrupted mental quiet. Creativity, reflection, and genuine concentration need space that the world rarely offers without negotiation. Cats provide that space naturally. They coexist alongside focus rather than fragmenting it. They do not interrupt. They do not fill silence with noise in order to feel comfortable. They validate, simply by how they exist, the idea that a person is allowed to be inside their own mind for as long as they need to be. Solitude, for cat people, was never isolation. It was always where clarity forms. And the presence of a cat inside that solitude transforms it from emptiness into something inhabited, quiet, but not alone. Loving cats, when you follow the psychology all the way down, is not an accident of preference. It is a declaration of values. A commitment to depth over distraction, to presence over performance, to connection that doesn't require constant proof of itself. Cats don't ask you to perform. They simply exist with you. And in a world that rarely stops asking for something, that quiet companionship, that small, warm weight, that low, steady sound, allows many people to finally feel like themselves again. That is not a small thing. That is everything.